Alright, so we're out here at this abandoned mine today because a member of the public called into the local authorities to lodge a complaint about this particular dangerous mine. Details from these things are often a little sketchy, but the guy hinted that there could potentially be some old explosives in here. The mines in this area were worked in the late 1800s, and so they're pretty old. And at this point, as you can imagine, with rock deteriorating over time, they're a bit, as we say, dodgy. So going into this thing, what we need to be aware of as inherent threats are that the rock could be bad. We're going to be keeping our eyes open for any sorts of abandoned explosives in here because they can be particularly touchy. Once dynamite sat around for 100 years, it becomes very unstable, and so we need to be careful not to not to disturb it, just to figure out where it is. And then there's a number of biological features we could run into. Killer bees frequent abandoned mines very, very regularly, and we always need to keep our eyes open for them. Mountain lions, bobcats, bears, javelina are all animals that are relatively common in these features, and we definitely want to try to avoid them. It's a tight space in there, and don't want to get into a wrestling match with them.
The killer bees? We thought they were gone. What, there's killer bees in mines?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, there's still killer bees all throughout portions of the United States, and you know, it's a perfect habitat for them, to be honest. It's probably preferable to them being in your house or my house, but since we have to go into the mine, it's something we really need to be aware of. They are very, very, very aggressive animals, and that's why they have that name, killer bees. There's no doubt that of many of the animals that we have to concern ourselves with in mines like this, they're right at the top of the list of organisms that we're most worried about. No doubt they're a lethal threat to us. And so because of that, we carry protective equipment, head nets and other things, but honestly, most of the time, if we come up to one of these features and you know, a mine like this and there's bees in it, often we have mere seconds to react to that, and most of the time, if you were to watch, you'd see us quickly running away from the mine because they are fast little animals and will quickly attack. The border regions, despite what you've maybe heard on the news, things are pretty wild, and that's being completely honest with you on that. It can sometimes be an uncomfortable place to work, although it's a beautiful area. It's tragic that the political conditions have led to what it's like down there, but there have been a few different instances where we've been out doing surveys and have encountered groups of people that were, you know, clearly illegals and also probably moving drugs. I was up on a hillside and there was a large group, so about 35 individuals, probably 300 meters downslope from me. And as I was traversing across the hill, I knew they were there, and I was following that golden rule of the desert, staying away from people, because you know, hey, whatever. But as I cut down slope to avoid a large fin of rock that was out, pop, 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 clearly a handgun.
Now, how close have you been to rattlesnakes?
Inches. Mere inches. I've been struck once, and I adjusted my bag and turned around, and there was a very large diamondback rattlesnake right about nose level in a crack in the side of the mine.
Have you actually gotten stung by killer bees ever?
They might just bump into you, and then like that they can be on you, and they will tend to concentrate around your head area, and you definitely don't want to, you know, breathe them in or have them sting your eye or your throat or anything like that. So meth is you know, I think most people understand you know, one of the popular drugs that's been plaguing the country. And I'm sure everyone's also heard about meth labs and trailers and storage units. And mines and caves are not left out of that. You know, they're often in remote areas. They can be hard to find. People might not know about them. There might not be any roads that go to them. And so for some folks, it might seem like the perfect lab environment for cooking up meth. And we've encountered a couple labs that were abandoned but still had really bad air in them because of the chemicals that were used during the cooking of that. At summertime, animals tend to be real active, and they just use it as a shelter, much like you might be camping out in your house with your AC turned on. same thing. They go in there, it's nice and cool, la-di-da, everything's good, and then somebody comes in there, and most mines are very relatively small. I mean, typical dimensions are 6 feet high, about 3.5 feet wide. So it's enough for a normal human to go through. But when a normal human goes through that, and there's a pack of javelina that are in there relaxing, they get a bit worried. It's a confined space. They don't know what we're going to do to them, and quite frankly, we often don't know what they're going to try and do to us. It's not that we fear them, we just don't want to get trampled, because most animals in these sites, their first instinct when something else comes in is to figure out a way out. And almost all of the mines that we go into, there's only one entrance into them, and therefore there's only one exit, and we're often in the way of the exit. So javelina, the best approach, and when it's happened, is to squish ourselves as thin as we can up against the edge of the wall of the mine, and hope that they'll run past. Yeah, bigger animals. We've had cattle that have been in mines when we've approached them, and they've come bellowing and running out of them. And obviously, we don't want to run into one of those. They're heavy and very big. And abandoned mines make a really great hiding place for caches of drugs and caches of people. They're a great hiding spot. Border Patrol and other agencies have camera technology that allows them to, fly in helicopters, and they can spot people on the ground with their cameras. If you go underground, though, you're invisible to any of that technology. And when we're tasked with doing a survey project in those areas, it's something we have to be prepared for, because it is very much a reality of our work environment. Not just the animals, but the humans as well. And so, what does that look like if you come into a mine site that's packed with 100 immigrants and 2 coyotes, the people that smuggle them, that don't want to be found? And that's a situation that we really try hard to avoid. We have found drug caches in mines because the drug smugglers know that they can put them in there and then run off and hide it, if they're being chased, and then come back at another time and pick them up. Or maybe it's a distribution point, because we have seen a few of those where clearly it was a cache site, and then vehicles would arrive and then off, pick up the stuff and move on. Quite frankly, it's part of the job. We look at it as law enforcement officers sometimes deal with dangerous people, and firefighters deal with burning buildings. Well, we deal with these mines and caves that have a whole suite of inherent dangers and hazards to them, but it's part of the job. And so, you usually don't have to twist our arm to go into these, because again, if we're not doing it, who would be? Going underground is something I really deeply and dearly love. It's a spectacular part of the world that is really neat. It must have been how Jacques Cousteau felt when he started really working with the ocean. It's a wide open frontier.